It may be too late for these films to blow up the box office, but it's hopefully not too late to watch them on Netflix. From crime thrillers to sci-fi epics, be sure to check out these underappreciated flicks. Sony Pictures couldn't turn a story about a historical financial windfall into one of their own, but that doesn't make the saga of Dumb Money any less fascinating. Directed by I, Tonya filmmaker Craig Gillespie and based on a book by author Ben Mesrick, Dumb Money chronicles the story of eccentric pop investor Keith Gill, played by Paul Dano. In early 2021, Gill, under his online aliases Roaring Kitty and Deep Value, captured the attention of hedge fund managers and aspiring billionaires alike when he began emphatically championing GameStop stock. Gill's followers carefully tracked his movements through his personal Twitter feed and his posts on the Reddit forum, Wall Street Bets, which created a culture of independent investors excited to do battle with Wall Street itself.
Babe.
Yeah.
We're like really fucking rich.
At the end of the day, Dumb Money may have simply been released at the wrong time. Less than a year after the film hit theaters, Gill returned to the public eye with a controversial move that made some start to see him as a cynical market manipulator, ready to exploit his followers rather than a Robin Hood-like hero. Dano, Seth Rogen, Nick Offerman, Pete Davidson, Shailene Woodley, and America Ferrera made up a star-studded cast. But their lack of involvement in marketing due to the 2023 writers and actors strikes led to Dumb Money receiving a $20.7 million return on a $30 million budget. Not exactly what would call diamond hands. Aubrey Plaza can do it all. After she made April Ludgate an American icon in Parks and Recreation, Plaza's deadpan demeanor earned her a successful film career. She got in the habit for the little hours, channeled her inner zombie in Life After Beth, and dove into the world of credit card fraud with Emily the Criminal. The latter film sees Plaza at the center of a grounded, tense, and fast-paced descent into the dark underworld of Los Angeles. Emily Bonetto begins her Walter White-style arc as a relatively normal young woman, struggling to make ends meet and pay off her student loans with meager earnings from her day job. With a felony conviction on her record, it's nearly impossible for her to find a better-paying career, and that ultimately leads her to commit even worse crimes. Emily the Criminal was released on August 12, 2022, a particularly crowded week that saw it competing against new releases Thor and Mac and Rita, alongside powerful holdovers Top Gun Maverick and Thor Love and Thunder. Despite decent reviews, it only grossed $2.1 million against a $2 million budget. Of all the films on this list, none have received the same level of critical acclaim as Phantom Thread. Celebrated auteur Paul Thomas Anderson's 20th century romantic drama was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. It also served as Daniel Day-Lewis's final film before his retirement from acting, putting a cap on the career of one of the most celebrated performers in Hollywood history. Day-Lewis plays fictional 1950s fashion designer Reynolds Woodcock, whose passion for dressmaking is only matched by his creative neurosis. After falling for a waitress named Alma, Reynolds finds himself torn between his need for total control and his desire to be loved unconditionally. With a limited release on Christmas Day 2017, Phantom Thread found itself in competition with both behemoth blockbusters like Star Wars Episode VIII: The Last Jedi, and newly released awards contenders All the Money in the World and Molly's Game. All 3 of those movies outgrossed Phantom Thread and were represented alongside it at the 2018 Oscars. In total, Phantom Thread made $47.8 million against a budget of $35 million. Less than the producers probably expected.
I think it's the expectations and assumptions of others that cause heartache.
Chris Hemsworth may be best known as the man behind The God of Thunder, but he's never been afraid to take on challenging roles in films by critically acclaimed directors. Between Thor: The Dark World and Thor: Ragnarok, Hemsworth teamed up with Michael Mann, the director of heart-pumping movies like Heat and Collateral, to make the techno-thriller Blackhat. Hemsworth stars as an imprisoned hacker who works alongside the FBI to track down the perpetrators of a devastating cyber attack. The film itself drew a polarized response from critics, and many felt that Hemsworth, then known for playing a stoic strongman with the physique of a god, had been woefully miscast as a shut-in computer nerd. Even Hemsworth himself has somewhat disavowed his work in the film. But their feelings aside, Blackhat is a rare opportunity to see Hemsworth play firmly against type in a thriller that's otherwise pretty engaging. At the time, it was drowned out by other adult dramas like American Sniper and The Imitation Game, and only grossed $19.6 million against an ambitious budget of $70 million. On the subject of Marvel actors in adult dramas, 2022's The Sun features what some critics called a career best performance from Wolverine himself, Hugh Jackman. Director Florian Zeller's family drama tests the Oscar-nominated actor by resting the entire film on his shoulders, along with the rest of the small cast. Jackman plays Peter Miller, a newly remarried big shot forced to confront the sins he committed in a previous marriage, when his estranged son is thrust back into his life in a dangerous state of depression. As emotionally cathartic and challenging as the film may be, it deals with heavy themes and shouldn't be watched lightly. Even though Jackman's performance in the film drew praise and successfully landed him in contention for major awards, The Sun had already been dismissed by most critics as an exercise in misery. This would be a tragic diagnosis for most films, but was especially damaging during the so-called dump month period in January. The Sun faced off against behemoth December holdovers like Avatar: The Way of Water, and sleeper hits like Megan. The Sun only grossed $449,650 domestically before closing out at $3.6 million worldwide. Flushed Away is another box office flop starring Hugh Jackman, but it couldn't possibly be any more different than The Sun. This co-production between DreamWorks Animation and Aardman features stars the Australian actor as a domesticated rat who finds himself in the underground society of Ratopolis after he's flushed down the toilet. That's bad enough, but a conspiracy involving an evil toad in the 2006 FIFA World Cup final threatens to destroy the miniature city for good. Flushed Away had some serious competition in theaters when it premiered. Not only was it up against the newer releases The Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause, and Borat, it also saw potential audience members drawn to holdovers Saw 3, The Prestige, and The Departed. A kids' movie about life in the sewer never stood a chance against films by Martin Scorsese and Christopher Nolan. That said, Flushed Away remains a strangely compelling experience for anyone who enjoys all ages adventures. Jackman is accompanied by the voices of Kate Winslet and Ian McKellen, the latter of whom won an Annie Award for his work. But the film could only muster a $178 million total against a baffling production budget of $149 million.
You find my pain funny?
I find everyone's pain funny but my own. I'm French.
In 2013, Lionsgate, whose previous efforts to launch franchises from popular young adult books resulted in massive hits like Twilight and The Hunger Games, was angling for another slam dunk with an adaptation of the best-selling science fiction novel Ender's Game. Though its source material is a fair bit older than the other series, the studio filtered it through contemporary taste with action-focused trailers, a Star Trek 2009 visual aesthetic, and a cast that included both young up-and-comers and established Hollywood legends. The movie faced a tough road out of the gate, as it was boycotted by the LGBTQ+ community based on author Orson Scott Card's views on the community. Whether that affected the box office or not, Ender's Game only grossed $126 million against a budget of at least $110 million. Controversies aside, the ideas proposed and the questions raised by Ender's Game still make it just as psychologically engaging as it is visually thrilling. If you're looking for a portal back to the age of dinosaurs or the late 2000s, try watching Will Ferrell's dinosaur-flavored comedy Land of the Lost. It may not be the beloved funny man's best movie, but it's a solid choice if you don't feel like watching Anchorman for a fourth time.
Captain Kirk's nipples.
In his role as the disgraced quantum paleontologist, Dr. Rick Marshall, Ferrell meets crazy characters played by the likes of Danny McBride, Jorma Taccone, and Leonard Nimoy after getting sucked into a space-time vortex. Despite being full of zany fun for the whole family, Land of the Lost only made $68.7 million against a budget of $100 million. Step Brothers, which came out the previous year, was made for 2/3 of the cost and made nearly twice as much. Maybe Ferrell could have carried Land of the Lost across the finish line if it hadn't had to compete with another newly released comedy that took the world by storm, Todd Phillips's The Hangover. If you haven't seen Starship Troopers yet, it's possible you've avoided it like the plague after seeing some of the internet's brightest minds debate whether it's a satire or fascism or a full-throated endorsement of it. Both sides can be pretty annoying about their arguments, but at the end of the day, it couldn't possibly be clearer that director Paul Verhoeven intended to poke fun at authoritarians of all stripes. It's a satire, alright? And one of the best that you can find on Netflix. Starship Troopers follows several members of an intergalactic military force that defends the interests of the United Citizen Federation. Their rule sprawling body of a future Earth where military service is revered above all else. The bug-killing exploits of Johnny Rico, Carmine Benes, Dizzy Flores, and Carl Jenkins are incredibly entertaining and endlessly rewatchable. Unfortunately, critics at the time didn't quite comprehend what the film was going for, and panned it as fascist propaganda without seeing its self-awareness. As a result, it only made $54.8 million against a budget of $105 million. But in the decades since, people across the world have come around to its brilliance. Would you like to know more? If you're looking to watch Denis Villeneuve's critically acclaimed Dune films, you'll have to log into your Max account. If you only have a Netflix subscription, then you'll just have to settle for David Lynch's adaptation of the novel instead. Some of Lynch's most iconic films, like Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks' Fire Walk with Me, started out as critical failures before blossoming into cult classics. Dune also received lousy reviews at first, but it's still considered a black sheep in Lynch's filmography. It may not have as many defenders as Eraserhead, but that doesn't mean it's not worth a watch.
I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer.
Numerous critical autopsies have been performed to better understand why Dune bombed at the box office, with the core cited reasons being poor marketing, coupled with a harsh critical response. It also opened against Beverly Hills Cop, a $13 million film that grossed well over $230 million. That's around $680 million in 2024, adjusted for inflation. Dune, on the other hand, only grossed about $31 million, against a budget of $40 million. That said, whether you're a fan of the new films looking for a new perspective, or just curious to see Kyle MacLachlan as the Lisan al-Gaib, there's something in the 1984 Dune that you'll probably enjoy.